Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree, and today I'm just doing a foreign languages I'd like to learn. So, a little brief background. I studied linguistics in college. Now, I was a journalism major, but I never settled on a minor. And so, when I say I studied linguistics, what I mean by that is I took a lot of English courses, like English Lit, and the course linguistics and English rhetoric and things of that nature. I took a lot of English classes in college, and I studied a lot of foreign languages in college. I studied 3 foreign languages in college and one in high school, and I'm not going to name them here because that's not important. But I also studied the history of and the development of the English language and its relationship to the Germanic family of languages and Proto-German and other Proto-Indo-European languages. And so I have a fascination for various languages, and so there are 5 that if I had the time and the brain power and the motivation, I would love to learn to different degrees. So number 5 is Gothic. Now, Gothic, you're scratching your head. Like, what the fuck? Gothic is officially a dead language. And it is only partially reconstructed. So this isn't one you can't fully learn. You can't learn to speak Gothic, and it's incredibly difficult to learn enough Gothic to be able to read and write it, because there's just not enough there. However, it is one of those languages I'd still like to learn. If given the opportunity, I'd like to at least learn as much about it as I can, because it has its own alphabet, and it is one of the early Germanic languages, one of the first to develop from Proto-German, or Proto-Germanic, I should say. And so it's an old language. Like I said, it is dead and not even fully reconstructed. So it is an old language. So old, in fact, that there's not a lot of references to it in the historical record. There's enough references to it and enough works in it that we can say with fairly certain confidence that the language did exist at some point in time, but scholars aren't in agreement on much beyond that. So it's one of those, yeah, if there was enough of the language to learn, I would love to learn it. Number 4 is Japanese. So I studied Japanese in college. I took Japanese as my foreign language credit. So I did study Japanese. I learned how to read and write in hiragana, katakana, romaji, and some kanji. Kanji are the Chinese characters. Hiragana is the squiggly Japanese lines, and katakana is the straight-edged Japanese writing, if that makes sense. And romaji is, well, Latin letters. It's the Latin alphabet, but transliterated into Japanese. So it's like Japanese words, but written how you would pronounce them using the Roman alphabet. And then kanji are the symbols, the pictographs. I love Japanese. I think it's a fascinating culture, it's a fascinating people, and it's a fascinating language. No, I'm not a fan of anime, and I am not a fan of manga. I've already done videos on this. But I am a fan of Japan, the people, the culture, the language, the history, and everything else. I do like a lot of Japanese music. I do like some Japanese movies and TV shows. And I love a lot of Japanese video games. All of my favorite video game companies are Japanese, by and large. Not to say all my favorite video games are Japanese, because that's not true. But my favorite video game companies, at least as far as console manufacturers, are Sony, Nintendo, and Sega, and those three are all Japanese. So, yeah, I have an affinity for the Japanese language and the Japanese culture, and I do like some Japanese food, which I discovered when I was taking a Japanese language course in college. Number 3 is Latin. I don't have to tell you anything about Latin. Latin is a well-known language. One of the reasons why I want to learn Latin is because, like I said, I studied linguistics in college, and I have a fascination of the early languages, and Latin is one of those languages that has had a tremendous influence on European languages, including English. And I'd love to learn to read and write and speak Latin because I think it would be cool. I think it would be really cool, especially as a pagan witch. I think it would be cool to be able to write and read spells in Latin. They may have more of an impact if they're spoken in Latin. Number 2 is German. This is modern German. I don't want to learn any of, aside from Gothic, I don't want to learn any of the classical or old, outdated Germanic languages. I just want to learn modern German. The reason I want to learn German is twofold. One, I studied English and linguistics in college, and English is a descendant of German. It is sort of a direct descendant, but it's not an exclusively Germanic language. It is a Germanic language with Latinate and other European influences like French and Spanish and other, here in America, Native American influences. So English is a Germanic language, but it's not German. So I want to learn German because English comes from German. And I think it would be cool to learn the language that English comes from because it would be fascinating. And I did learn a lot of German in college. Second reason why I want to study German is because my family comes from Germany. I'm not going to get into the details or the specifics because, there are complications and you can figure them out yourself. And so because of that, I don't want to go all into, my German heritage, but I do want to learn more about, the language, and I want to learn more about German culture because I have German roots, and so it's part of my lineage. Number 1 is Irish Gaelic. This is one of the languages I have actually studied. I studied it in college, but I did it as an independent study because they don't teach it. You cannot take a college class that teaches Irish outside of like a handful of like 2 or 3 colleges in the entire United States. So outside of Ireland, Irish is a relatively unknown language and extremely difficult to come across. Now, in the Republic of Ireland, it's taught in public schools, and then it's forgotten as soon as kids get out of public school. They brush it out of their brains and they go back to English. So it is not a dead language, but it's classified as an endangered language, as in it may become extinct in the near future. As in no one will be speaking it natively in the near future. And not even that far off. We're talking 20, 30 years maybe, if that. The language will be essentially dead. I want to learn Irish because, again, I have Irish ancestry. I also want to learn Irish because I'm an Irish pagan. And my primary goddess is Bridget, and she is the goddess of Ireland and Britain and the whole British Isles. She's one of the big ones, and she fascinates me. And I'd like to learn more about the Tuatha De Danann. I'd like to learn more about the Fae. I'd like to learn more about Irish mythology and literature and culture and things like that. And it would be nice to be able to read and know how to pronounce, speak, and understand the native Irish words that are going to come up in these sources and stories and things like that. And I think it's a fascinating language. It's a really interesting sounding language. And it's also unique in that it's one of the languages that has its own alphabet. It does use the runic alphabet. It does not use, well, I mean, you can use the Latin alphabet to write Irish, but it was historically written in the runic alphabet, which makes it fascinating to me. So there you have it. 5 non-English languages I would like to learn if ever given the time, opportunity, and motivation.